I believe that we should hate people who say that they hate people. You hear it all the time. I hate people. People are the worst. People shouldn't be on this planet. Um, Animals are better than people. And it's understandable. We all have that emotion sometimes. We have the reaction to things because, let's be real, people are our number one source of competition. And we interact with people all the time, and they don't always do what we want to do, and they don't behave the way that we think that they should behave. So it's understandable to feel like you hate other people. But there are people who make hating people part of their whole identity. And they call themselves misanthropes. Or their philosophy is misanthropy, or that's what they say their philosophy is. And I just want to take a few minutes to unpack why I think that's uncool, unhealthy, and kind of a ridiculous position. And I think that we should actually treat it as a social taboo because of what it implies. So to begin with, let's define our terms. Misanthropy comes from two Greek words, miso, which means hatred, and anthropos, which means man or mankind or humanity. You recognize that root from, say, anthropology, the study of mankind. So misos and anthropos, misanthropy, it means the hatred of humanity. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But, okay, so when you say that you hate humanity, when you say that you hate people, you're also a person. So there's one of two things happening there, and it's usually maybe both. Or maybe the fake pose of both, is that you're either, it's self-hatred. Like you say you hate humanity, but you're a human, so you really hate yourself, and you're projecting that hatred and that frustration onto everyone who's ever lived. And that's something that's you see in anti-natalists. There was a guy who went to a fertility clinic and blew himself up recently. You want to stop people from having babies. You just want to stop the human story from continuing. That's pretty extreme, but ultimately, I think that guy just probably wanted to die, and that was his way of doing it. And that's really a manifestation of his own self-hatred. And the other thing that could happen is that you would say you're a misanthrope. It implies that you think you're better than everybody else. You're better than anyone who ever lived. You hate all of humanity. None of them are good enough for you. None of us are good enough for you in the whole world. What an obnoxious position. You're an obnoxious person because you're better than everyone else, and no one lives up to your standards. You must be a really impressive individual, and very seldom is that the case. Very seldom do people who self-describe as being misanthropes exhibit like super high achievement, or with a few exceptions, and I'll maybe touch on those a little bit. But so it's just an obnoxious position, and based on that, it's like, oh well, you think you're better than all of us. Well, we should not like you because of that. I think that's a rational reaction to that. And the other thing, one of the big points that I make when I talk about misanthropy is that misanthropes are disappointed idealists. Because if you look at what they're really doing, they've created an ideal of how people should behave in their heads. They've created an ideal of how people should behave in their heads, and they're holding all of humanity accountable to that ideal. Now it's just this thing that they've made up for themselves. This is how people should behave based on what I think. Well, no one even knows those rules. No one agreed to be, administered by those rules. No one agreed to follow them. You are basically saying you're creating laws that no one even knows. And it's an unrealistic expectation. We have all this data. We have thousands of years of human history to look at. We can see how humans generally behave. And there's such a broad spectrum. You have people who do great acts of charity, people who help other people and are almost selfless in the way that they help other people. You have people who build beautiful buildings, write symphonies, create great works of art, great works of literature, all these things. Are you telling me that you're better than all those people, or that those people don't live up to your ideals? Of course, humans also have tendencies, and can we even call them flaws because they're part of human nature? They're flaws according to our own rules, but they're part of human nature. So people will also hurt other people, and that's pretty normal in the scope of human history. People will seek power over other people, and some people will use it for good, and some people won't. And what we consider good is somewhat cultural. But to hold people to this higher standard that you've made up is totally unrealistic. What other sentient humanoids have you ever encountered? What other people who would even know what you're talking about in terms of the morality that you're imposing on other people? What other creatures have you met who are better behaved but can use words and have all these elaborate concepts to describe them and operate at the same level? I mean, there are some animals that are pretty smart, but there's no animal that you can operate with on that level. And so you're holding them to an expectation that isn't even human, and which you've also have no experience with. Because as a human, you don't know what it is to be anything but a human. You only have human experience, your own experience of the world. That's all you have. That's the only way you have to evaluate anything. You wouldn't even know how to evaluate another being, except for maybe they conform better to your own magical thing that you've made up in your head. I believe that we should have ideals. We should have high ideals, but they should be based on human exemplars. We have stories and history of men who've done great things, fantastic things. And that's what I talk about I'm an idealist. I talk about that in my philosophy, the solar idealism and the order of fire. And we're all idealists in that way. And what we mean by that is that we look at the greatest examples of how men have behaved and understand that we can never be that particular guy, because that guy can only be that guy. But there's something just beyond him that he was reaching for. And that's the ideal. And we should all reach for a higher ideal. We should all set higher ideals for ourselves and reach towards what we think is good and right and awesome. What do we think? What we think is good. But we also have to base that in what humans are capable of. And what humans have some kind of track record of doing. It has to be based in reality. And the ideals that misanthropes create are clearly not based in reality. But another problem with misanthropes is in many cases they're mad at humanity because they're mad about the people around them. They have an environmental problem. Misanthropes, they have found themselves in a situation where people around them don't care about the things that they care about, so they're mad about that. Or people respond to them poorly. Well, if people respond to you poorly, like there may be something that you're doing wrong. You have to look at people. Being social is a skill. So it comes naturally. Some people comes less naturally to others. But you can develop better social skills. Because I know people who walk through the world and have a great time. So what are you doing wrong? You have to self-evaluate and be honest with why people react to you in a poor way. So, and I knew this guy years ago who was really obsessed with fitness and so forth, and he was mad that other people didn't care about the things that he cared about. But he was in a small town. He wasn't, and people cared about other things. But there are people in the world who care about the things that he cared about, but he just wasn't around them. So if you say you're a misanthrope because people don't care about the things that you care about, or have the values that you have, then you need to seek out the people who do. Because I guarantee you, no matter what you care about, there are people who are better at it than you are. There are people in the world who do amazing things. You can find any industry, whether it's art, literature, business, any of these things. There are people at the top of the game. And if you're not surrounding yourself with them and you're mad because you're hanging out with people who don't even care about those things, that's a you problem. You need to seek out a better environment, because humans are social animals. We need to be around other people, even introverts. I thought I was an introvert, and I am probably, but I thought I was an introvert, especially until like 2020. And my introversion has limits. I do need to be around other people. I appreciate being out in the mix of life and seeing people achieving great things, and just people living life. And not all of them act the way that I want them to, and some of them gross me out, and some of them piss me off, and that's totally normal and totally fine. But there are people who are worthy of admiration in the world, and you need to focus on those, because there have always been lots of different people who cared about lots of different things in the world. I mean, we have, like I said, we have all this human history to talk about. So that's really what I wanted to say about misanthropes, and why I think misanthropy should be seen as a ridiculous position. And a few years ago, I did a podcast with some of my friends in the Order of Fire, and we talked about the ultimate good and the ultimate evil. And universal good and universal evil are slippery concepts, and they're hard to actually define, because they're very tribal and they're very cultural and relational. Like, what's good for one group may not be good for another group. But I feel like one thing that we should all be able to agree on is that we care about the continuation of the human story. Like, as humans, like any species, as humans, we should want humans to continue. And the ultimate evil should be people who don't. People who want to stop the human story, whether they're the people who think that we shouldn't be on the earth because we're a blight to the planet, or the people who think that AI should replace us, and think that we should be replaced by computers someday or whatever. Transhumanists. These people who want to end the human story, people who hate people, should be seen as the natural enemies of all of us. So if you say that you hate people, it means that you hate me. It means that you hate everyone I've cared about. It means that you hate everyone who's ever lived. And you hate the human story. So why should we not hate you back? And I think we should. We should treat that as the ultimate evil. People who want to end people, people who hate people, should be, if anything, we should all be able to agree that those are our enemies. All of our enemies. Because I think as humans, we should want the human story to continue. So if you say you're a misanthrope, just stop it. Recalibrate your expectations about humanity. Enjoy being a human, because that's all you'll ever be. And when you encounter misanthropes, I think you should push back on them and question them and ask them why they think it's cool or okay to say that they either hate us all or they're better than all of us. So that's what I have for you today. I'm Jack Donovan. Stay solar.